I am so excited to talk with Dan Hansen today. Dan is an amazing example of how to enjoy the ride on your fire journey, which is definitely a lesson I did not learn on my own journey. He doesn't practice hyperfrugality, but he does strategically invest in both real estate and the stock market. Dan is on track to retire in his early 50s with an impressive portfolio. There is so much to learn from his slow and steady wins the race financial mentality, and I cannot wait for you to learn how he did it and show you how you can recreate his financial journey. As you know, this is the Fire Series, which is sponsored by our friends over at Baselane. I'm Mindy Jensen, and I am thrilled to introduce BiggerPockets' new partner, Baselane, the all-in-one banking and financial management platform built for independent real estate investors. Baselane combines banking, rent collection, and bookkeeping to create streamlined workflows that save you time and give you a clear view of your cash flow. Get organized with unlimited accounts you can create for each property. Stop wasting time on manual bookkeeping with Baselane's auto-tagging for your transactions. Visit baselane.com/biggerpockets and join more than 40,000 landlords who have stopped the busy work and started growing their rental portfolio with Baselane. Baselane is a financial technology company and is not a bank. Banking services provided by Thread Bank, member FDIC. Now let's get into Dan's story. Dan, I know you haven't retired quite yet, so let's first hear a little bit about you, where you're based, what your career is, and how you've gotten from where you started to where you are now.
I'm 31 years old right now. I live in Mystic, Connecticut. I grew up in Jamestown, Rhode Island. I was always kind of like in a, middle class household growing up with an idea of like saving. So I was always a saver. I'm an engineer for the Navy. I've always thought of myself as just, save money until I kind of discovered the FIRE movement and your podcast and everything. And then that's when I decided, trying to get into real estate more, or basically making more money through real estate.
Okay, so you have real estate properties. How many properties do you own?
Yeah, so I own 2 properties. Both of them are investment properties. I live with my girlfriend in her apartment, and I'm able to rent both of them out. So the first one I bought in 2019 at a very low price of $235,000, which was, still like at the time, the top of the market. So I was kind of nervous still, but I just kind of went into it. It was my primary residence, and I had really no plans of, renting it out or anything. I hadn't really thought about real estate. And then about a year later, when the pandemic hit, actually in March 2020, I had a friend who needed a place to stay. So I let him rent a bedroom out for $600 a month. And I was like, wow, this is great. And so with that, I increased my 401k savings. I wasn't maxing it out yet at the time. And so I started just saving more money with that until I got into Airbnb on that first property. I originally started doing that by just renting out one room in the house on Airbnb as a shared living space. And it turned out to be really good. And then when my first friend moved out, I rented out both extra bedrooms in my house on Airbnb. And then I had the idea of putting a bathroom in the lower level of the house, it was a raised ranch. And I put a bathroom in the lower level, kind of moved downstairs to walkout basement. There wasn't really like a full kitchen or anything, but, bathroom, living area, running water and everything. I lived there, Airbnb the rest of the house. So as a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, kitchen, living room, everything as a separate unit. So now it wasn't a shared space anymore. So that did much better on Airbnb. So this was in August 2021. I did that and started doing that. Immediately, I was like, wow, this is great income. And I was, really living the house hacking life where my space was not very nice. But however, when guests weren't staying there, I did go upstairs and use the full kitchen and the full house. And the year of 2022 was great for Airbnb. I did really well with it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I have to keep going. And then in 2023, it slowed down a little bit, but it was great. So for reference, in 2022 on Airbnb, I brought in $48,000 on a $235,000 property. That's great.
So what percentage of your mortgage payment was your Airbnb generating? It sounds like it was covering your entire mortgage payment.
Oh, by a ton. So I refinanced my house in 2021, January 2021, to have a 2.875% interest rate. And I also changed it to a 15-year mortgage. So my payments on that, everything included, tax as well, that's escrowed into the mortgage, is $1,900 a month. It was like more than doubling my mortgage, which was awesome.
That is awesome. That is the power of house hacking. If you have the lower payment and if you can generate enough income to cover it. And even if you can't, you're offsetting the costs of your mortgage, but you aren't offsetting. You are making money off of your house, which is awesome.
That was the idea. And that's why I was like so excited about this. In 2023, I brought in like maybe $37,000. It was less, but still great.
Yeah, you're still living for free. But on the flip side, you're sharing your space with random somebody else's.
Yes, and that's true. But I was definitely willing to do that to kind of get ahead and be able to save a lot more money.
So when during this real estate journey did you discover the financial independence movement?
In the beginning, actually, one thing I enjoy on my own is I play a lot of paddle tennis. It's this weird sport. We don't have to get into it. But I do a lot of driving to tournaments and matches, whatever. I like money. I was like, all right, let's find a podcast that I can, talk about money. So I searched on, the Apple Podcasts, Money Podcast, and, yours came up and I was like, wow, okay, there's a lot of people like this and this is a great idea. And so I started just kind of reading more about it and listening a lot. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. And so I didn't really change too much about like my lifestyle, I guess. But I really started tracking a lot more. So I have a big spreadsheet, like at least weekly. I track how much I have saved and everything, in my 401k, IRA, brokerage account, just checking account. I just like enter in that number at least once a week.
I love that because you're conscious about where your money is going. And I think that's something that the FI movement gets right is if you don't pay attention to your money, maybe it'll stick around, but it probably won't. Once you discover this concept and you start paying attention to your money, when Carl and I started paying attention to our money, we turned it into a game. Like, okay, we weren't spending a lot, but we were spending on things that, we didn't align with our values. It was mindless spending. And once we started focusing on it, we're like, oh, okay, now we've saved, I don't know, $3,000 a month. Well, can we get to $3,500? We're saving $35. Can we get to $4,000? Can we, like, how much can we save? Oh, let's not go out to dinner tonight because that's more expensive than cooking at home. Let's just cook at home. That's a saving. So we started like almost gamifying it. And the same when we started tracking our spending, you track with, just normal tracking and you're like, oh, I can get that lower. I can get that lower. Next month can be lower. Next month can be lower. It starts to add up and it's no longer feeling of deprivation when you're the one who's doing it on purpose, as opposed to when you hear of this concept of budgeting, it feels so restrictive. Like, oh, these are all the things I can't have. And when you turn it into a game, it's like, look at all the things I am willing to give up. It's the same thing, but with a different mindset. So I love that you're being intentional with your tracking because that will lead to intentional with your savings and investing. You're tracking weekly, so I bet you have a really good sense of what your expenses look like. Do you feel like there's anything that you are spending on that don't align with your values, or have you really kind of tightened that up since you started tracking it?
I love to talk about my expenses, and it's tough for me to track and like what category I put it in. So a lot of my expenses are traveling to play paddle tennis tournaments. However, there's prize money at these paddle tennis tournaments. I also teach paddle tennis on the side a little bit. That's kind of one of my side hustles as well. So all the travel ends up being an expense that I write off against the income that I make for paddle tennis. So that kind of becomes a wash. So I could think of it as, all right, I have this high expensive hobby, but it kind of pays for itself almost. And then my other expenses have been Airbnb and housing. Didn't mention about my second house yet, which I ended up buying in March of this past year after my first house I transitioned to long-term rental. So a big expense with that was kind of getting it ready. Immediately, I actually started with Airbnb for that second house, and that's expensive. I'm buying furniture for it. So I went through the high season, spring, summer, doing Airbnb, and then I just transitioned to do long-term rental there. But, just those kind of expenses, like that's kind of like the big expenses I have. The only other kind of luxury expenses that I would have is eating out at restaurants. So that's kind of like my guilty pleasure. I like to, every now and then go to Michelin Star restaurants with my girlfriend. I could easily cut that out, but like I said earlier, I want to enjoy the journey.
Okay, well, let's look at the expenses you just listed. You said I have this expensive hobby of paddle tennis, but then you said it's offset by the money that you're winning and the side hustle training people for paddle tennis. I don't look at that as a big expense. You enjoy it. If it was something that you hated, I just happen to be really good at paddle tennis, so I have to go to these tournaments, but I hate it and I don't win any money, and then stop. But you clearly love it. You're so excited talking about it, and you teach other people about it. So if that's a wash, that's a win, because you get to do something you love and it doesn't cost you anything out of pocket ultimately. So overall, what would you say your average savings rate is?
I don't want to put a number on a rate, but I can give you numbers of how much I save every week or month. So I max out my 401k now, which is $23,000 a year. When I bought my house, I took a $30,000 loan from my 401k it's called the TSP. So I took a $30,000 loan instead of taking out, like $100,000 from my brokerage account. I took out just $70,000 and left some in there in my brokerage account and took out a loan for my 401k for $30,000. And I pay the interest myself. It's 4% interest, and I pay that back. It comes out to like $264 biweekly. And that just goes back into my 401k. The interest also does. So that's over 5 years. I'll pay back $30,000, but it's additional savings right now, basically. So I'm putting $23,000, and that works out to around $7,000 or $8,000 a year additional in my 401k. Then I also max out the Roth IRA, which is $7,000. I put in $850 for my paycheck every other week in my brokerage account. So that's around $22,000 a year. So that's kind of like the guaranteed savings. And then I put in additional every month that comes from, my rent collection or any side hustle money that I made that month. I try to put more into my brokerage account.
Okay, I love that you have a brokerage account and that you're putting so much into it. Scott and I call it the middle class trap, where you have all of your money, all of your net worth is kind of locked up in your retirement accounts, your tax advantage retirement accounts, and your home equity. But now you've got brokerage accounts. You said something like $20,000 a year into a brokerage account. That's awesome, because that's just going to keep compounding and keep building and help offset that middle class trap. But you also have rental real estate. So once those mortgages are paid off, all of that money is coming in. I mean, you're making more than your mortgage anyway. That's all coming in as income. What are you investing in your 401k, your IRA, your brokerage accounts?
Majority of my stock investments are just ETFs. I probably have 8 different ETFs in different market categories. We've got like the small cap, large cap, S&P 500, the Russell ETF, some international ones as well. And then with maybe 15 to 20% of my brokerage account, actually of my Roth IRA as well, I have some individual stocks, like big blue chip stocks, Amazon, Google, Facebook, big name ones like that. The percentage of individual stocks in my portfolio is actually probably higher than most would recommend, but they've all kind of done well in the last 4 years of where I've been really focusing and tracking on this. So that's the mix of my portfolio, I guess. I don't really buy anything that I don't think is going to do well. I guess no one really does, but I don't do any like options trading or small random like penny stocks, I guess.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If you don't want to own this stock anymore, selling options on it until you no longer own that stock can be an interesting way to make money, but I wouldn't recommend it to anybody who is just starting out, and I would not recommend it to anybody who hasn't exhaustively researched it. I think there can be this mentality where, I need to be in everything. No, you don't. I'm not in crypto. I'll never be in crypto. I don't have any interest in crypto. I don't understand it. I am not asking anybody to send me a really long email to explain it to me. It's just not my thing. There are other people who don't want to be in real estate. estate. The best time to not be in something is when you're not interested in being in it. So, I think that's great that you have different buckets that you're in. And should you decide you no longer want to be in individual stocks, then sell them slowly. Sell them quickly. However, just intentionally investing, I think, is the best way to do it. I am also in some individual stocks. When we first started investing, we didn't know about these things called index funds. So we invested in all individual stocks. And then, some of them did well. A couple of them did really poorly. Those are the ones I don't talk about. Ask me about that one time I invested and it went to zero. Yay. But it happens. And, then you move on and you learn, oh, maybe the hot stock tip, the meme stocks aren't the way to go. Let's get back to FI and talking about FI. Do you have a FI number or a FI age in mind?
I imagine, in my retiring in my 50s, early 50s would be great. So right now, my expense, like outside of my mortgages, I would be completely fine living off of like $4,000 a month. But I think of my FIRE number as possibly like 9 million, which would be, with the 4% rule as like $30,000 a month. And part of that is like, all right, is inflation going to go up so much that in 20 years, that might not sound like a crazy number? So like 20 years from now, is $30,000 spending going to be similar to like $15,000 a month? And I really want to, enjoy my retirement as well. So, I imagine my lifestyle will increase, or I'll want to increase my lifestyle. And then if I'm retiring at 50, inflation from when I'm 50 to 80 years old, I'll have to spend more money when I'm like 80 than when I'm 50, just because the nature of things get more expensive over 30 years. That's why I would think 9 million would be a great number or equivalent. So like, for example, my rental portfolio right now, which is just 2 houses. And when that kitchen finishes, it'll be, 3 units basically. So my first house rents for $3,000 a month. The upstairs apartment, which is just 2 bed, 1 bath, is $2,500 a month. And then the 1 bed, 1 bath lower level, I'll rent for $1,700 a month. And I already have a lot of interest in it as well. So I think it'll rent pretty quickly. So that'll bring in $7,200 a month. That right there is like a good portion of what I imagine I want to retire on. And when those mortgages are paid off, that'll be like, okay, that's a lot of money coming in. Even right now, with where my expenses are below $4,000 a month, it's still a lot of money coming in relatively, I think.
I like what you're saying about inflation and thinking about the future, and I want to circle back to that, but I just did some quick math, and your original 9 million number with the current rentals, without adding any more, because of how much money they're bringing in, your 9 million is now only 6,840,000. Adding another rental could bring that number down more. You said you track your net worth. What is your current net worth?
All right, so my current net worth is probably around $700,000, with around $400,000 in equity in both houses and $300,000 across, the 401k, Roth IRA, traditional IRA, and brokerage account.
So are you looking for more rental properties, or are you looking more for,
Yes, I think rental properties are great. It's the way to financial independence at an early age. Without having a massively high salary, I don't really get how people could do it without rental properties or real estate. $114,000 my salary, it's respectable, it's fine, but it's nothing crazy, right? I think it's much easier to get rental properties, and I like being a landlord also. I will say that. It probably isn't for everyone. I was fine with the amount of work the Airbnb required, and being a long-term tenant landlord is much less work so far, at least. So I think, real estate and rental properties is, in my mind, the easiest way to grow your net worth quickly. I also did buy my first property at what turned out to be an amazing time in 2019. But my next property I bought in March 2024, which nobody would have said is a good time to buy. Well, maybe, I don't know. But, it's the most expensive and high interest rates, but it can still work.
Do you plan to continue to work after you hit financial independence. I'm looking at your situation and I think it's really awesome. You're bringing in, do we say 7,200 in rent and your expenses are 4,000. Your expenses are covered by your rent. Your expenses are covered by your income. It feels like you are coast-fi.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely like consider myself coast-fi, which I think is, just keep doing the same thing and I'll be fine. When I retire, I would probably continue to like teach paddle tennis. That's about it. And then, manage the rental properties that I own and will buy in the future. Another kind of dilemma I have about when to retire or retiring early is, so I work for the federal government and they have a nice pension that comes along with retirement.
Hey, we didn't even talk about that.
As well as health insurance, right? So you can maintain the same health insurance when you retire. I don't know if you retire early, I don't know if that's still the case, right? So that's something I'll have to calculate down the road. Like, all right, and so the earliest day that I could retire with the federal government and immediately collect a pension and the health insurance is at 57, so when I get closer, that's something I'll really kind of have to weigh the options, So, and I can always do a deferred pension as well, although it's less, and I could still collect it at 57, or I think, and retire earlier, but it'll be less money. But the health insurance, I have to look into that more, actually, because that's something that I would have to think about when retiring.
And there may be, we have an administration change coming up. There may be changes to health insurance. If anybody is listening right now and thinking about retiring, but worried about the health insurance aspect of it, speak with an insurance broker, because I had a really great conversation with my insurance broker, and she really helped me see how that it can be very affordable insurance after retirement. But again, with an administration change, there could be changes to the health insurance, and this is buying it off the exchange. I would say, though, if your income or your net worth goes up so much that the job is kind of immaterial, I wouldn't stick around for that pension. I mean, let's say you have a net worth of $10 million at age 40, I'd ditch the pension and ditch the work unless you really enjoyed the work. I mean, I still work. I'm financially independent. There's a lot of rewardingness. That's not even a real word, but I'm going to use it in a sentence. So then it is. There's a lot of rewardingness out of work that you enjoy. But I have also had jobs that I hated and could not wait to get out of. And you bet your butt, if I was still in that job, I would have quit as soon as we hit financial independence. I did a quick compound interest calculator with your $700,000 frequency contribution, like no contributions additionally over 20 years with an estimated 8% return, your balance will be 3.4, almost $3.5 million. That's just your net worth without adding any more to it. You're adding to it every year, so that's going to go up. Let's say you're contributing another $30,000 a year. That's $4.8 million. Let's say you're contributing $50,000 a year annually. That's $5.8 million. And what do we say you needed? 6.84. How do we get to that 6.84?
Yeah, I track my liquid savings at least. I have an idea of how much real estate. But my liquid net savings or liquid savings from my 401k and brokerage and IRAs are around 300,000 every year going back. So I looked back before this. So at the beginning of 2021, I had just crossed $100,000 in savings. So that was a nice milestone. And that was right before I had started kind of with the, real estate hacking and everything. January 2022, I was at $147,000. Not a crazy jump, but in 2021, I hadn't really started really getting into the Airbnb. It was towards the end of that year. And then 2023, January, that jumped up to $190,000. And I was maxing out my 401k, putting everything into the Roth IRA and putting a lot of money into the brokerage account. But if you remember, the year of 2022 was a terrible year in the market. So it still went up, almost $45,000 while losing like 20% value that year. I was like, okay, this is good. I'm saving a ton of money, even though that number isn't going up as much as it would have. And then January 2024, I crossed $300,000. Then, it was a better year in the market. So I saved a lot of money throughout the year, even though it's kind of like random every month. And then in March 2024, I was up to $328,000 before I bought my house. I took basically $100,000 out of my brokerage and 401k to buy that house. So then it went down, into like, 230,000. And now I'm back up to like 299,000 as of on Friday. Today, I think the market is up last I checked. So I'm probably across the $300,000 mark again.
Woohoo!
Which is cool.
It's fun to watch it continue to go up. When it goes down, that's not so much fun. But if you look at the historic returns of the stock market, you zoom out and you can see that when it goes up, it might go down a little bit, but then it goes up more and comes down. And over 105 years, 125 years of stock market returns, it goes up and to the right. You can't argue with that because that's how it goes. And I have complete faith in the American economic system that the stock market will continue over the long run to go up and to the right, which is why I continue to invest in stocks.
I agree.
Dan, what is your biggest takeaway from pursuing financial independence that you would like to tell our audience?
I would say to start, like I have a lot of friends that don't really think about it that much, put as much away as you can. Like even if it's in your 401k to start, right? Put as much in your 401k as you can. Like nobody's going to regret putting too much in. You can all in like a financial hardship, I think you can always take it out of your 401k, especially like with the Roth IRA. I know you can take out like your contributions at any time, not your earnings, but your contributions you can take out of a Roth IRA even before you're 59 and a half. So, you're never going to regret like putting more money away, I think. I would just say, keep your expenses lower than your income, and focus on that. And growing your income is nice too with side hustles as well. But bigger difference between your expenses and your income, you're going to save so much faster and you're going to be able to feel like more free, I guess, like a few years ago, I wouldn't have thought about spending like $3,000 or $4,000 a month. That would be like, that's more than I could afford, right? So I've slowly kind of increased my lifestyle a little bit, but still trying to maintain a relatively big difference between my expenses and my income.
I love that. I love that so much. Dan, thank you so much for your time today. This was a lot of fun. Is there any place that our audience can find you online?
Yeah, they could find me on Instagram. Instagram handle is DHansenRI. I also have a paddle tennis camp and I have another Instagram page. I think it's linked in my bio there.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. And we will link to your social media in the notes below. If you like this video, please click the thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more inspiring fire videos like Dan's. This is Mindy Jensen signing off.